Hello, everyone, and welcome to the June 26th edition of the SIG Network meeting. As always, this meeting is covered by the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, effectively boiling down to be nice to one another, so please do be nice to one another. This is an open agenda meeting. Please do feel free to drop stuff into the agenda that is linked in the calendar invite. We should have plenty of time to get to it today, because today I don't think we're going to have much of a meeting. We have very, very limited agenda. I don't think we really have the right crew here to do triage. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. We'll talk about what we can talk about, and then we'll probably adjourn very early today. All right. You should be able to see the meeting notes. Does that look good?
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, we're going to kind of skip triage. However, I did want to just point this one out. If somebody is interested in this, there is a flake. If somebody wants to go ahead and take a look at that flake, please do feel free to ping yourself into that. I'll mention it here under triage. If you get stuck on it, ask for support. You don't have to stay with it. But if you're interested in taking a look at a test flake and kind of digging around a little bit, that one is potentially helpful. I added a link to the AI Gateway working group proposal that I posted in SIG Network a couple weeks ago. This has actually been floating around for like a month or so. I shared it with GIE folks originally, and then they were kind of like, yeah, maybe. And enough people had seen it that I felt like I just need to share it out in general. So the TLDR on the AI Gateway working group proposal is there's a bunch of features that relate to inference that the GIE doesn't really cover or aren't really in scope today. Like GIE, the Gateway API Inference Extension, is very geared towards a model serving framework, emitting or advertising capabilities and metrics and stuff like that to make a final routing decision to the right VLLM instance, etc. But you could think of that as almost like service-like, in that it's that last stop before a final routing decision is made. But there are features that are a little bit more oriented towards like the gateway or the HTTP route. Like you might put in a semantic routing, which is decide what the model should be by using semantic similarity search, or token rate limiting, which is more of like an API management construct. Things like this are in there. So the idea is I'd like to see if people seemed interested in maybe like just what I'd really like to see is people who are working on AI gateways, GIE, whatever, to tell us if we should even continue to like add more inference related stuff. Like that's the first question. Should we continue to add more standards for this kind of stuff? And the answer may be no. And then if the answer is yes, should it just be part of the Gateway API inference extension? I think that would probably be our default, would be to put it in there. But maybe there's reasons to like say, well, maybe that's not the best place for certain kinds of features. So that's, if you're interested, that's what this proposal is saying. Please join the mailing list and kind of, share your concerns, comments, whatever. But the idea is just, should we do more? Is there more to do here? This working group would be kind of the group to get together and figure that out.
One thing for the people.
Oh, hey, Antonio.
Yeah, for the people with enthusiasm, whatever org in Kube has overhead of. I know that you know, but just I've seen people replying in the mailing list, and I don't know the names. Working groups are structures, and they need have obligations. It's not that you need to work 10 hours per week, but you need to fill in the year reports and all these kind of things. So just for people to know, there cannot be just one person and then let it rotten and then nobody uses it. There has to be some work to be done. So people that sign on building a working group need to sign on do some work. Just to clarify.
No, that's a good clarification. And the kind of the rules and some of the documentation about this, like the process and stuff, is linked in the doc right at the top, so you can see some of this.
Events, meetings, open the meeting, and all the things. You see, that's why I want to avoid any people, saying this. Everybody gets excited, but after 2 months, nobody goes there, and there is a problem for the GitHub admins, for the steering they need to approve, for all these kind of things.
Yep. If it can't get anywhere, we will have to shut it down. We don't want it to just languish. So it does need to have multiple people who are not just coming in to lurk, but to be active and to push. And the other thing that I got some feedback on, and something that was a consideration that people that are interested in this working group should know, is that we are pretty strapped for API reviewers. So we have to be at least a little bit sensitive to that. If we're going to say, hey, there needs to be all these new APIs, we need to be thinking about like what the timeline is going to be for that, considering how
Oh,
strapped we are for API reviewers. So
no,
just
no.
something to
So,
think about.
one thing, one clarification. Working groups don't do API reviews. Neither.
No, I know. I'm saying if the working group proposes APIs, just be sensitive to the fact that we are generally pretty strapped for API review,
Oh,
and
no,
we shouldn't
but
be
then
proliferating APIs.
there are two stages. They need to propose an API to a SIG, and the SIG need to accept the API,
Yep.
and then once it's accepted, they go to API review.
Yep.
So there are two stages. The API review is the final. First, the SIG need to accept the API. So it's not that you, a working group, can come with something. I can put you the example of the LTS working group or this
Yep.
new working group node lifecycle. They are coming with APIs, CRDs, whatever. First, the goal is, oh, we have this problem and we are going to meet together and we want to have this, and then we come with this proposal, this CAP or whatever thing, right? And when they come with the proposal, they need to the SIG, and the SIG need to say, okay, I'm going to accept or not. So when the CAP or the proposal is accepted is when you do API review.
Yep.
So that's because it's a common misunderstanding. A working group doesn't own anything. It's a forum to discuss cross-SIG problems. Okay, and
Yep.
they do proposals, but the proposals are not doesn't have any more leverage or anything that another group that doesn't have working group doing proposals. Right? It's just formalization of an effort.
Yep. I'm clear on all this. My point was more to the effect of like, consider that process and what it takes to go through that process, and decide if there are things that just belong in the GIE, this working group should probably just do that and not be too hungry to. My whole point was like, the working group should not be too hungry to make a bunch of new APIs. Like that shouldn't be like the goal. The goal should be figuring out where the best place is, and part of that, like part of the function of figuring out where the best place to put things are should be thinking about the time it takes to get things done too.
But I know that you know, but people know I don't want to have another
Yeah.
KPNG. Another thing is working group doesn't have any more leverage or any more authority than people from the internet coming with a proposal. So whatever is developed there is a proposal. The SIG needs to study the proposal and approve. If this is going to be an API for gateway API, clearly for a gateway API, it will most likely follow the process that any CAP or whatever thing the gateway API maintainer will review and all the stuff, or will figure out. But just to be clear, because then when people get excited, then they want to get it merged, and then it's when the problems comes and the frustration comes, and I want to set the expectation. Working group doesn't mean that you are going to get an official API in Kubernetes.
Roger that.
So who has this keyboard?
That's me.
Ah, okay.
What? What a keyboard.
Okay. And then, okay, so that's a good point. We do need to make sure that we're setting expectations. I'll reword that actually a little bit better, but we need to make sure that we're setting expectations with that working group really good. But then if people are willing to come and spend the time and, make a proposal and do that collaboratively, there's potentially a lot of value to get out of that. So, Adrian, just an FYI.
You know the mechanic, right? Is you need to get sponsorship from the SIG, and then you need
Yep.
to get a steering approval. Those are the mechanics.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, if you're interested, that's the SIG Network mailing list thread. And that's it pretty much, unless you want to do triage with me, and if we want to do triage in the smaller group, there's 3 issues that I saw, Antonio. One was a flaking test, one was this one that was open a few weeks ago, and then this one was bounced. So it was Dan Woodship's NF tables kubeproxy to do. So I don't think we need to look at that one. It just needs to Dan to take a peek at it. It's really just this flake.
The middle one, sorry for jumping ahead.
No, sorry.
We spoke about IPVS a few meetings ago. I think this. Okay, and that's what spurred Dan to create that
Oh,
kit,
right.
5343.
You just rang. Yeah, this is ringing a bell for me all of a sudden.
Yeah. So what do we do with this issue then? Leave it in its current state or accept? We're not going to accept it, right?
I think that we can close it, right? Okay, I will.
You're gonna close it and put a note on it, kind of saying where we're headed next.
We are not going to do anything. Is what they're only saying, basically, right?
Right.
So there is nothing we can do here.
Roger that. And then the other one's just a test flake that somebody needs to take a peek at.
Yeah, those is the scale, right? The load balancers of GC at this scale, I mean, and we are still using a cloud provider version. That's all. It takes some time for provisioning and refresh. I need to check with Bowie and others. Yeah, I will take a look at it.
Okie doke.
There are no more topics. Have you seen the I was doing finding the origins of Kubernetes networking? Have you seen?
I saw the Slack time or the timeline you put in.
Look,
Yeah, that was
it was 10 years ago, and say, oh my god, Ethereum started in 2015. I couldn't believe that.
Here, copy the timeline image in here somewhere for me, and I'll put it in the doc.
It was really cool. I mean,
I copied copied into the doc, and it's kind of fun to look at. But
I'm
yeah,
doing some report for that. Okay.
I forgot that Celium had started in 2015.
Look, I went to the repos. I think that they started doing Docker Network only. At that time, it was Docker Network, right? The CNM. Sort of thing. Yeah. I was in another project for networking and in OpenStack. I wasn't in Kubernetes.
Yeah. I remember working on Maltus back at Mesosphere. That's cool. It's funny to think how far we've come in over a decade now. So cool. Yeah, Adrian put it down, but we are jumping to 17th will be the next meeting because there's US holidays and stuff like that, and that ended up just being the next best day. So we'll see everyone, which I think is actually not quite 3 weeks. Yeah, about 3 weeks. 3 weeks from now will be the next one, and then we'll be back on track with our regular meetings. So any last minute topics or anything before we go? Otherwise,
yeah, have you seen the email I sent to the mailing list about the OCI spec chain?
I might have missed that one.
Yeah, I saw that with the selfie.
Which the one that I only have half of my face and one is with their head chop and all the things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This is when all this is the good things of this conversation. All this multi-network, and especially the Q&A. I was expecting Sapa here. When they started with this discussion, for me it was pretty evident one of the things. Okay, there is no way that you can say, I just want to move this interface into this container. And talking with the Samuel Karp, that is a container maintainer and friend at Google, and other teammates, they told me, well, if you have a case, just go to the OCI specification and propose the change. And I started that path like, I don't know, 1 year ago. I don't know. I put the timeline there. And it was about 200 discussions. That's why I was doing this timeline, right? And all the people from there was living the moment of CNI, CNM, and all the stuff. And the big discussion was they didn't want to put anything that means configuring network, right? So we need to change. The goal was to say, just let me move a network interface. And well, now we can do that. It's in RANSI 1.4. The OCI spec will allow to define, move this network namespace, this network interface to this namespace. Where is this important? So for people that is with AI ML workloads or some telco stuff that needs an interface, just an interface, this removes all the need of having this chaining and all this stuff. You just modify the OCI spec that we have NRI or CNI that are better, are things that just do that. They patch the OCI spec, and the runtime will move the interface for you.
Cool.
You see the photo? I mean, Arnaud is the one that I chopped the head, and I have only one eye.
You can tell it's you. It's got half your face. We can tell. See Mike back there.
Yeah. Okay. So appreciate if you have feedback or want to play with that, just let me know.
Roger that. Very cool. Linked it in the doc too.
Before we drop off, I sort of want to discuss like the same thing that Shane and Adrian were discussing like before we started. What would be a good point to start contributing? Like, are there good first issues somewhere on GitHub? What would be a good entry point?
The answer to that is very complicated. I usually try to narrow down first what you're interested in. So to be perfectly frank, it is fairly difficult to just jump in somewhere in SIG Network and kind of go. And that's for valid reasons. Depending on what your interests are. So like for instance, like what's something that you work on now that you're interested in?
So we are the users of Istio. I am a infrequent contributor there, like no, not that frequently. But I'm like super happy in maybe helping out with retry budgets, for example, because I know
Gateway
that
API.
is, yeah.
Yeah, no, there's definitely plenty of room in Gateway API. It is not something that's like I was saying, we were saying this before the recording. So for anybody who's watching the recording, we were kind of talking about how Gateway API is kind of a hard project to get started with, but it is often requested. Like people are like, hey, I'm new, brand new, but I saw Gateway API is very popular. I want to help here. Kind of difficult because it's a specification. There are conformance tests and stuff like that. So you need to have an implementation. In your case with Istio, you'd be in a good position to do that. I'd say take a look. I mean, if you're ready to kind of put some time in, you could go right at like retry budgets and stuff like that. If you want something that's a little smaller to kind of, to take off, that's hard, but there's probably some things out there, especially in the realm of like documentation, stuff like that. But it isn't easy to jump in and like work on a GEP. That will take time. The enhancement proposals always take time. However, if you want to get started on retry budgets, helping out with that, figuring out who's already worked on it, and getting connected with the community, please do feel free to just ping me on Slack. I'm just at Shane on Kubernetes Slack, and I'll be happy to kind of point you in the right direction. As far as something like easier to do, or maybe something that, maybe not easier, maybe something a little bit more tactile to do, we do have, so obviously you could contribute directly to like some of the Gateway API implementation stuff in Istio. We do have the Ingate project, which is under Kubernetes SIGs, which is kind of like the spiritual successor to Ingress Nginx. And that is a Gateway API implementation that is just starting. Like it's currently being developed from scratch. So that might be a little bit more of a tactile place that you could jump in and say like, well, I'm going to implement, this specific controller or this field for HTTP route, that kind of stuff. And I don't think they're very far along yet. So if you jump in there, there's lots of opportunity to like work on a new Gateway API implementation as opposed to a mature one, which might be your style. Like I want to jump in on something and kind of build it from the ground up.
Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah. So please do ping in Slack. Cool. Thanks for joining. Carl, did you have anything?
I'm just lurking. I'm new
That's
on
cool.
the EKS networking team, so I'm just trying to lurk around.
Yeah, very cool. Feel free to ping us in Slack too if you're interested in kind of jumping into something or have questions. We'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks.
I think
So the two more recent contributors are Adrian and Daman. So you can. I always ask people to do the questions in the public channel, but those are the people that you can follow their steps, because they also, you got reviewers, right, Adrian and
Sorry?
Daman? You are reviewers now, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you
I think I don't know if he's an approver yet.
approval is more complicated because you need
Yeah.
to own code, and
Yeah.
that's more complicated. But reviewers is a big step, and I think that both of you get that status, and you also implemented several caps, and you can learn from them as they have more recent experience on what it means to climb the ladder of contributing.
Yeah, I think thanks for mentioning that, Antonio. I started probably this time last year, so I've been trying to figure out ways to get involved with contributing. So it's all kind of fresh in my brain. I also am involved with SIG autoscaling, so I can, if you have ideas or questions, you can always pick my brain and we can figure out next steps. Or just kind of send you the right direction. Like Shane said, he's also open to DMs and he can help point you the right direction and that kind of stuff. So happy to help if needed.
Yep. Sounds good. All right. Well, I think we're going to adjourn early then for the day. Cheers, everyone. July 17th for the next one.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Yeah.